Hi everyone, welcome to the series Problem Solving Using Data Structures and Algorithm. This is part 1. In this series or in this course, I will focus on problem solving, especially problem solving using data structures and algorithms. So that's the focus of the course. We'll work on different types of problems, whether the problems are asked in interview questions or otherwise, if you're taking a computer science course, how to approach a problem, how to eventually arrive at the solution using things that we know, using tools that we already know. We'll talk a little bit about Big O notation. So in this series, I'll have videos on Big O notation, how to find out the complexity, the time and space complexity of solutions that we write. I'll look at sample questions from my own interview experience and also from other sources, especially websites. Again, I'll repeat here, the focus of this series is not going to be just writing code, but rather how to arrive at a particular code and why a particular solution is better than the other. Okay, so that's going to be the focus, and eventually arriving at good coding practices, eventually arriving at writing a good code that can solve a certain problem. So that's what this course is all about. Okay, before we actually start talking about the toolkit, the areas or the topics that we'll cover, one thing that this course does not cover is that this is not a comprehensive, I would say, this is not a comprehensive data structures course. So do not look at it as a data structures and algorithm course. Rather, we are looking at data structures and algorithms as a tool to solve problems. So I want to make that clear even before we start talking about the toolkit. Okay, so what is the toolkit? These are the topics, these are the specific topics that I'll cover in this series. And why is that? This actually comes a lot from my own experience. What are data structures? If you think about the definition itself, it's nothing but data organization, management, and storage format, right? How do we want to represent data essentially? There are numerous ways of doing that. However, in this series, we'll focus on these specific topics. Similarly, what is an algorithm? A set of steps used to solve a particular problem, right? And then there are numerous algorithms available in order to solve problems. However, we'll focus on this. Why are we focusing only on these data structures and algorithms? That is because 90% of the problems that we encounter, whether in an interview or on any problem on your computer science class, whether it's homework or exam, is essentially focused around these topics, which is why after doing a lot of research, I zeroed in on these data structures and algorithms. So we'll focus on these topics and solve problems using these. Okay, so that is going to be my toolkit. Now moving on. The structure, as I said, I'll talk about Big O notation for every problem. So this is how we are going to proceed in this course. A little bit about data structures overview. For those of you who are not completely familiar with that, I'll have lectures on these data structures that are part of our toolkit, remember, and their usage in solving a particular coding problem. Finally, we'll also talk about algorithm design while obviously looking at some problems. Okay, so let us proceed. Now, this is something that will stay with us throughout the course, and I call it design template. Now, these are the important things that you need to remember whenever you're looking at any coding problem. The moment you encounter a problem, whether it's in an interview or otherwise on a homework and so on, these are the 5 things that you should look for. The first one is constraints, the constraints that accompany the problem. The second one is the ideas, the time and space complexity, finally the code, and then the testing. So the thing is, we have to remember this template, these points. Whenever we look at a problem, we have to fill in these parts. We have to fill in what a constraint is for this problem, what are the constraints for this problem, the ideas, starting from maybe some basic ideas like a brute force approach, right? And then moving on to the complexity of each of the approaches that we come up with, and finally coding the best approach, and then testing our best approach. Okay, so what are these? Whenever we look at a problem, we'll try to fill in these 5 things. Okay, so let's actually go ahead and look at a problem. For example, like I'm taking a really simple example, given two arrays, which if you're more familiar with Python, we can think of these as lists, right? Find common elements in both. So it's a really simple problem. We are looking at some lists that have some elements, right? And our goal is to find out if there is an A here and an A here. Our goal is to find out these common elements. This is the question. If you go back and check our template, we have to fill in each of these 5 steps, right? So let us fill the first step, which is constraints. Now, constraints can be thought of as questions that you might want to ask either yourself or the person who has asked this question, whether it's in an interview or on a homework. Maybe the homework problem states itself. So essentially, in constraints, we are trying to decide the scope of the problem. Okay, for instance, for our problem, the first question could be, how large can be my input, right? So there are two lists that I'm given. Let's say they are L1 and L2. And by the way, I'm talking in terms of Python. So L1 and L2. How large can L1 and L2 be, right? So that is my first constraint, how large? Ask the interviewer or go and check the homework problem and try to find this, right? Why? Because my solution can depend on this question. Similarly, the second question I might want to ask here is, what is the type of values in L1 and L2? Are they going to be the same type? For example, are they going to be numeric, or are they going to be string type, or both, or mixed, and so on? Because again, my solution might depend on that, right? Um, for instance, if let's say the answer to this question is that the list size cannot exceed 50, and then the type is always an integer. Let's say this is the answer, so we are getting the answers. And based on these answers, I'll start framing the rest of my constraints or the rest of my questions. So for example, next question could be, are these arrays sorted? Yes or no, right? Because my solution might depend on that, right? So let's say they are not. Sorry, they're not. They could be in anything. And finally, maybe for this problem, what is the return type? What do I want to return from this problem? What is the return type? What I mean by that is whether we want to return a Boolean, let's say a true or a false, if a match is found in L1 and L2 or not. If yes, then that's fine. Okay, yes, I want to return a Boolean as soon as a match is found. Are we looking at, and then my fifth constraint could be, or question could be, are we looking at multiple matches or not, right? So are we looking at more than one match, greater than one match or not? So based on that, my code will shape up, right? So after asking all these questions, I have decided the scope of my problem. Now, if you remember from the template, the second step is ideas. So we start thinking about brainstorming how we will solve this. The first thing that you need to understand is that we will be focusing on how to design solutions instead of trying to cover all interview questions or all practice problems that exist, because that's almost impossible to cover. But something that's actually possible to cover is to build these strategies that would help us solve those problems. For instance, I can start by simplifying the task. I know from my constraints that list one could be some values that are integers, and then L2 again could be some values that have integers. So maybe I can actually go and write this down. So maybe this list could be something like this, maybe a very simple sort of list, and then I'll start looking at solutions, right? So simplify the task, make it really small. How will I solve this problem for a given list L1 and L2, which are of size 3 only, right? The next thing that you can think of is think of a suitable data structure. Now, this is problem specific, I would say, right? So in this one, it's already given that we have a list or an array, right? So the data structure is sometimes given. Sometimes you have to figure out whether we want to save it in some other data structure and why do we want to do that, right? And finally, if you have looked at problems like these, think about those problems and how could you relate them to this problem. For instance, If you've looked at searching for a particular value in a single list, that might be related to this problem because we are searching for a match of one of these values here, right? So that can help. Um, okay, so taking this approach forward, the first thing that comes to my mind is the brute force approach, which means I can start, let's say my list 1 is 2, 3, 4, right? And my list 2 is 3, 4, 5. With the brute force approach, which is my approach number 1, I'll begin with this element 2, right? Take element 2 and then loop through all the values in list 2 and keep checking whether this exists or not. If it does, return a true. If it does not, then return a false, right? So this is the brute force approach. This is my first idea. And there is nothing wrong with using the very first approach that comes to your mind, because then you can improvise on that, right? So maybe writing a pseudocode could be helpful in some situations. For example, in this one, I can say for some variable in list 1, and then for some other variable in list 2, go and check if um, v equals u, and then so on, right? So you can write a pseudocode to better understand how this code is going to come out, right? So this is a brute force approach. I can see that this might be time consuming in certain situations if L1 and L2 are huge. In our problem, if the constraint says that L1 and L2 cannot exceed 50, then this might work as well, right? So you can just go ahead and implement this. However, if the constraint said that this could be 5,000, right? In that situation, I want to improve this, and I'll come to complexity. We'll better understand then why, right? Because it will obviously take more time. So in that case, I have to build upon my brute force approach here. For instance, I can create unique objects. For example, a set or a dictionary. For those of you not familiar with that, that's okay. We'll cover some parts of those. And you can look into my intro to programming playlist where you can understand what sets and dictionaries are. So if those of you are familiar with Python and any other language, you know what hash tables are, right? So we can create an object on those lines. For instance, if we are using Python, I can create a set, right? A set of L1. So I can do a set of L1, and this will create all unique objects of L1, right? Similarly, I can create a set of L2, and this is going to create all unique elements. And then all I have to do is go and overlap these, which means I have to go and find the intersection of set L1, set L2, right? So if I go and find the intersection of these, I'll get the elements that overlap, and maybe if I don't want to get the elements, because in my constraints they were asking us to find uh, a true or a false, right? So the return type was a true or a false. So in that situation, all I have to do is find the intersection of set L1, set L2, and see whether this intersection is greater than 1. Because if it is greater than 1, then we have found a match, and then we can return true, right? So this is another way of thinking about it. So similarly, we can think of more better approaches and improvise on this solution. Okay, what do we mean by improvising a solution? Okay, so then if you think about the template, we covered constraints, ideas, and now we are coming to complexities, right? As I said, if you're not familiar with the big O notation, I will cover that in this series. However, for this problem's sake, here I will list down the space complexity and the time complexity of the solutions that I came up with, right? So solving problems, as this says, is not just about finding a way to compute the correct answer. The solution should work quickly enough and with reasonable memory storage, which is why big O notation is an important part of both your ideas. So for idea number 1, it's a brute force approach. So the time complexity is going to be the length of list 1 times the length of list 2, which is huge, which could be huge if they are of the size 5,000. Similarly, the time complexity of the second solution approach is way faster than this one. Why? Because we're using a hash table, which in this situation was a set if we were using Python, right? So then the complexity is going to be whichever is the minimum of length of L1 or length of L2. And just by looking at these, if you're familiar with the big O notation, you can tell that the second approach is way better and we would rather implement that. Now, once we are done with these three important parts of our template, which is, again, I'm repeating, constraints, ideas, complexities, now we are ready to write the code, which is obviously going to be in Python in this series throughout, so that you can continue with my intro to Python course and then come here. Okay, a little bit about coding in general. So if you're taking a computer science class, mostly your exams are on paper, and if you're appearing for an interview, your interview is on a whiteboard. Coding in your IDE, for example, we'll do in Spider, is different than coding on a paper or a whiteboard. So we have to be clear on a few things. First things first, think before you code, right? What does that mean? Even before you start writing the code on the paper, it's better you write pseudocode somewhere, maybe in the Scratch sheet or somewhere, and then convert that to code line by line, right? Coding outside of an IDE does not give you permission to stop abiding by good coding style, so make sure you're naming your variables properly, indenting and everything. Even when you're writing the pseudocode, indent it so that you do not run into issues when you're converting it to actual code. And most important point, and I'd rather like emphasize this point, if the problem is big, break it down, decompose it into smaller logical pieces. We'll see a lot of illustration of this, but this is, I would say, the most important step of all when you're writing your code. Read your code to yourself at every step so that you can minimize any sort of errors. And obviously, we'll see this in more detail because as we move forward in the course, we'll actually write Python code while solving problems. Okay, and then in our template, the final step, testing. Test for edge cases, that means the extreme cases. What happens, let's say list 1 is empty and list 2 is empty. That's my edge case. What happens when list 1 is having 5,000 values? Let's say if this was in our constraint, list 1 has 5,000 values and list 2 has just 1, and so on, right? Think of the extreme cases. So that's edge case. Test your solution for this and see if the code works or handles these situations. Similarly, cases where there are no solutions. Again, depending on the problem, there could be cases when there could be instances of the input when there is no solution. So make sure that your code handles those cases, right? And then finally, the non-trivial function tests that will actually determine whether your program works for a given list of values, for a given some input 2, 3, 5, or this is L1 and L2, let's say 3, 5, 7, 9. I can clearly see that there are matches. So whether my code will handle these values or not. Okay, so with this, I end this intro video. In the next video, we'll start talking about the big O notation. Thank you.